Okay, we're joined again by Thao to talk about her paper about testing in the wild. So again, if you want to learn more about her work, you can see that here, but we might just get straight into the content this time. So yeah, tell us very broadly to begin with about what this paper's about and um, Australia as a kind of testing sandbox for technology.
hmm So this paper started out as a research project looking at drone delivery in Australia. So not a lot of people know, but Australia is one of the world's largest commercial drone delivery testbeds. The company testing here is a company called Wing Aviation. Wing Aviation is a subsidiary of Alphabet, the company that also owns Google. So they are, some of the largest big tech companies in the world. And it really started off looking at drone delivery that was happening in Canberra, as well as in Logan in Queensland. And Queensland has been declared sort of the drone delivery capital of the world. It had the most drone deliveries occurred anywhere happened in Logan in like 2023, 2024.
Okay, so has this technology been kind of rolled out and normalized as everyday practice now? Or is it still like something that's being tested and trialed?
Yeah, we're actually out of the testing zone now. So through 2024, 2025, they were still in the trial phase, and now they're out of that phase, meaning that it's fully commercially operating.
Right. Okay.
So importantly, not in Canberra, but we
Not
can
in
get to
Canberra.
that. Yeah.
Okay, maybe talk about why, throughout that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Spotify and Tinder are both, and Facebook Meta, all these companies have kind of used similar kind of petri dish kind of orientations towards Australia.
Yes, that's
Um,
right. So, while drone delivery is where it started, where it ended up going was looking at actually how many big tech companies love using Australia as a test bed. So, as you mentioned, sort of Tinder piloted sort of Tinder's social and the super like feature in Australia first. Meta tested its upvote downvote features in Australia first. Spotify also tested in Australia. Big tech companies love to do products and services testing in Australia before they roll it out to greater markets. And this actually is a very big trend for Australia. So we're not only a test bed for big tech, we're a test bed for other kinds of things. FinTech is another big one. Clinical trial testing is another big one. And then the more you look back, the more you can see things like, well, actually, even during the colonial period, sort of like British testing of nuclear weapons in places like Maralinga and Emu Field. You can look at the medical testing on Aboriginal people in the Central Deserts. You can look at the refinement of penal management practices
yeah,
during, in places like Botany Bay and so on.
yeah, yeah. And so before I read your paper, I knew kind of some of this was happening. I always, I suppose, just associated it with like you could test stuff in Australia because it's such a small population, and then if it messed up here and didn't work, no one would really give a shit overseas. No one would find out about it, and they could just move on to something else. But I think, yeah, the way that you've kind of historicized this is really interesting and makes a lot of sense. So let's go into that into some detail.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, you really link what these kind of modern day huge tech companies are doing to, specific, overtly colonialized practices over the past couple of centuries. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, uh, Australia really like was founded as a colonial experiment, right? Unlike other forms of colonization that are things like, you have colonial projects that are through things like Manifest Destiny, or you have colonial projects that are like all about like, liberté, verité, these like sort of like French colonial projects or like American colonial projects or whatever. Australia really begins life as like, can like white people live out here or what? Like, can European bodies survive in like the tropical north or the central deserts? Can European plants like flourish in these environments? Can animals, European animals, plants and animals live here as well? And how can we use this space as a territory for experimentation?
Yeah, and it's like what you're talking about there is happening at the same time as the birth of sociology, where like, Durkheim is writing about, Australian Aborigines through this kind of very colonialist and kind of ethnocentric lens as well. And that's kind of been the foundation of our own discipline as well.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so specifically, I think, do you think that nation building kind of discourse is still prevalent in what's going on with this high tech stuff today?
Absolutely. I mean, if we look at, say, this sort of um, like all of the emphasis at the moment on like AI,
Yep.
and how can we make the Australia AI ready? How do we put innovation first and so on? And it's like there's so much emphasis from the Australian government to participate in this sort of AI race, this
Yep.
innovation race. But
Data
what can we,
centers.
pardon?
Data centers now too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Data centers, exactly. Like, but what are the means for us to do that? Like, actually, we don't really have the infrastructure. Like, our 5G is terrible. Like, why would you do any
Yeah.
kind of um, like, like software making here? We don't really have the population. Like, we don't quite have arguably, we don't quite have the infrastructure for research that a lot of these places need to develop, like AI models and so on. But what can we offer? Well, we do offer like wide open space. We do offer like a population that is very unique in terms of multiculturalism and so on that you can perform tests on.
Yep. Yep. So, so can you talk a little bit more about the multiculturalism there? I mean, um, is Logan a, a site of multiculturalism?
Yes, so Logan is one of the most multicultural places in Australia.
Yep.
And that is because it has a very long checkered colonial history. So, for example, like many places in Queensland, they did a lot of like plantation industries, cotton and sugar specifically. They did what you're not supposed to do in urban planning, which is to like buy up large swathes of land and to build social housing there. And what you do is effectively ghettoize the poor when you do that kind of thing. And then they also had quite a lot of refugee resettlement programs happening in Logan. So there's lots like really huge Muslim populations there as well. And then you have chain migration happening on the back of all of that. So you have like chain migration happening also specifically from Pacific Island communities,
Hmm.
because again, you have that history of plantation labor, specifically Kanaka labor or what we call blackbirding.
Yep.
Um, you have a really unique social makeup in that place. And so Logan was identified for uh, um, drone delivery testing, but before that, it was also a test bed for things like social services testing. So Centrelink, for
Right.
example.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's where they trialed things like the basics card, the like income management. So
Mhm.
if you were flagged as high risk, you would a lot of your Centrelink payment would be quarantined, and you could only spend it on sort of state sanctioned things, right? So you couldn't spend it on alcohol or cigarettes, things like that. They also trialed drug testing on Centrelink recipients, so you had to like pee in a cup every time you wanted to access your Centrelink payment.
Wow. What year was that?
This
When
is
was that?
happening in the 2010s.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. I've always, as someone that's been interested in class and wrote a lot about hipsters and bogans, like Logan often comes up as a kind of place that's associated with bogans, which is often it's more associated with kind of lower working class white people as well. So it's really interesting kind of thinking about the kind of, I suppose, um, developing multiculturalism in that kind of place over the past kind of decades, I suppose, at a place that was like, I suppose in the 70s, maybe considered a fairly kind of white bogan joint.
Totally. I mean, but it's the thing about low socioeconomic housing, is that like all sorts end up there.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And there's like a direct correlation between like racialization and
mm,
like class,
yeah,
really. Like even
yes,
when we talk about bogers, that's a racialized whiteness.
that's right. Yeah,
It's not they're like other whites, they're a specific kind of white. Like in America, we would call it white trash or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. And Chavs in the UK, yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, are places like this in competition with other places to get this stuff happening there? Relating a little bit to the kind of nation building stuff. Do the politicians that kind of are kind of talking about it here, they're kind of craving this stuff coming to their places, right, as a kind of social good.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in some capacity, insofar as Australia is not the only country in the world that adopts test beds testing as an economic strategy. Singapore, very famously, is a
Mm.
test bed for AI system technologies. South Korea is also said to be a big test bed. Singapore for very similar reasons to Australia. I mean, firstly, because it's like a very wealthy nation, but also incredibly racially diverse. There's like a say in industry that if it works in Singapore, it'll work anywhere in Asia.
Yep.
And that's the same logic is often applied to Australia. Like if it works in Australia, Australia's a good proxy for other nations.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. I'm kind of, for some reason, I'm surprised by that. Yeah. Just in your kind of own orientation to your own country. I don't really imagine Australia as being a good proxy for
White Christian
maybe
America, often they talk about it as
America or even like Europe, and just the different kind of notions of taste and the way culture works and what it is. It's kind of
Mhm.
it's surprising to me that something that could be tested in Logan or Newcastle even could be thought as being tested to kind of roll out in Paris and it'd be fine.
Yes, I mean, sometimes I think this is like retrospective talk adopted by
Yeah.
industry, and actually, all the determinants of why somewhere gets chosen as a test bed has way more to do with leniency around regulation.
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about how the drone um, experiment worked or works? Yeah. What the testing process looked like?
Yeah, so drone delivery essentially works like any other form of food delivery app. So like DoorDash or Uber Eats or whatever. So you have an app on your phone, you place an order, and instead of a person coming and delivering your thing, it's an autonomous drone that comes and delivers it. The big promise of drone delivery is that it does like under 10-minute delivery. And in my field work, that was true.
Yep.
Like from pressing the button to it coming because it's
Okay.
just
So your Big Mac lobs up and it's still hot.
hot.
Hmm.
Yep. The thing that they always testing on is burritos. Like it's like
Okay.
the perfect hermetically sealed package and you can like shake it up and it still arrives totally fine.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like that. Originally, when they were running, they had these warehouses, and stockists would come and bring all the stock, and you'd have people who worked for Wing who would then see the orders, do the pick packing work, as in like take the thing off the shelf, put it in the box, load up the drone, and off it would go. Now that we're no longer in the like trial and testing phase, all that has been outsourced to the workers, to like rooftops of malls. And it's all workers who work in takeaways that do that. So if you work in like a Boost Juice, now your job is to make Boost Juice and then run up to the roof and put the Boost Juice in the package for the drone to take it.
Okay. And it's working?
Weirdly, it does.
Yeah.
Depends what you mean by working. Working for whom?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, could you
Does
tell
it
us more about that?
literally,
That's really important. Yeah.
yeah, does it literally work as a system? Like, yes. Like, is it commercially operating? Yes. Are there workers doing this stuff? Yes. Are there people ordering it on their phones? Yes. How does it make money? None of us know
Okay.
because a drone has a payload of about 1.2 kilos. These drones, anyway, 1.2 kilos, which is nothing.
Mhm.
It's like a loaf of bread. It's like
Yeah.
two coffees. It's like two sushi rolls, right? And
Yeah.
the one thing in the trial phase that was happening is that they would do free delivery, and every time you ordered something, you would get something for free.
Right.
So um, uh, the big thing was like free Tim Tams
Yep. Okay.
with every coffee.
Yeah.
And now it's like now we're past the trial phase, and now it costs money for delivery. It's like $5 to $7 for delivery.
Okay. So how does that compare to someone dropping it off on a bike or a car?
It is marginally cheaper,
Okay.
but dropping something off on a bike and a car, you can order full meal. You can order groceries. You can't do that via drone right now. You can only order like one coffee. And would you pay $5 delivery on a $5 coffee?
Yeah. No. That's right. Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it like that.
Especially
So,
in a low socioeconomic like context like we're
yeah.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm just still trying to imagine it happening. I mean, like where I live out here, there's like very complex trees and power lines in front of my house. I'm just imagining like a bunch of drones being caught up into them. So I imagine like my naivety about that kind of thing has already been tested beyond and they can handle all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so the main thing at the moment with drone delivery is that they only test in peri-urban, suburban neighborhoods. So it doesn't work in high density or mid density.
Right.
You need a front yard or a backyard. to
Yeah,
be
okay.
delivered to, right? So it's like targeting these specific kinds of households. That's why they chose Canberra, because it's like an entire city built around the nuclear family as the
Yeah.
primary unit. And Logan is like this. It's very low density.
That's fascinating in terms of the development of cities and housing, right? Because we're moving towards the opposite in terms of higher density, smaller in many ways, except for like in suburban places where even the kind of quarter acre block now is increasingly taken up by the whole house and there's maybe a front yard, but probably not a backyard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're experimenting with lots of different models. So maybe there's a drone delivery site that you can go to in your local shops that's like a designated zone. Maybe there's like collective pickup zones, the same way that like Amazon has lockers at your
Yep.
local shops now. They're experimenting with that kind of thing. So if you don't have a front or backyard, we can still find somewhere to deliver something for you. So again, now that we're out of the trial phase, they're operating in Ipswich, they're operating in the Gold Coast, they're operating in Melbourne.
Yeah. Okay. And is it rolled out just in Logan? Is there other places around Australia that it's happening at the moment?
Well, I mean, just those, I mean, those places there I spoke about.
Yep.
So the Gold Coast, Ipswich, Melbourne, soon they will go to Sydney, I'm sure. But actually, they're big mark. Now that they've finished the trial phase, the big thing is that they've gone overseas again.
Okay.
So originally, so this is an American company, right? So they started in the US and they just couldn't get like regulatory approval to operate commercially.
Yep.
And so they shop around and they say, like, where can we like do all of our trials? And Australia is like, we would love to be considered innovation forward.
Hmm.
Please choose us. And so they do come and they do like a co-regulatory modernization process with the national regulator to do this kind of regulatory sandboxing to let that happen. But in the States, they would not allow that to happen. But now that they've done their proof of concept and they have sort of the evidence to show that they can do it safely, now their biggest markets are the US.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, the regulatory thing I'm finding interesting in the sense that like people I know have a lot of kind of anxiety about drones. You know, for a silly little example, for instance, as I live in Cooks Hill in Newcastle, like many suburbs, there's the Cooks Hill like Facebook group where people that live here discuss things. At the moment, there's a bunch of drones at night around the place, and people are really annoyed by it and wondering what they're doing and like, are they taking photos? Who owns these things? Kind of stuff. It's interesting in terms of the regulation of them because we know they're not really allowed in dense public spaces. Even, places like the beach and the park and stuff like that, there's rules and regulations for them that there's, yeah, this kind of almost welcoming kind of orientation towards these companies to come and do that here. It's almost like, selling out to the lowest bidder.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting. Like these like drone delivery drones, like break every rule we have around drones in Australia. So we have rules around things like you can't operate beyond visual line of sight.
Hmm.
Every drone has to have one operator. You can't operate over densely populated places like parks or houses, buildings, and so on. These drones are allowed to do all of that. And that's what I mean by the sandboxing. Like exceptions have been made for these drones
Right.
to do all those things.
Okay. Okay. So can you tell us, yeah, so moving towards the summing up, I suppose. So yeah, can you kind of relate it back here to the kind of broader argument that you want to make in the paper in terms of how innovation broadly, we can kind of generalize it out a bit here, is kind of related to, histories in terms of the ways different nations develop their colonial histories and their kind of general structures, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, for me in that paper, one of the points I'm trying to make is the way that race comes in as and is framed as an asset for experimentation. So in the earliest days, in places like Australia was a land where you could do experiment with whiteness,
Yeah.
right? As I mentioned, can white people live here? Can European plants and animals thrive here, and so on? And so you can experiment with like actually, can we colonize to these places? Yes or no? And we can do like a live testing to work that out on colonized peoples and colonial subjects.
Hmm.
And whiteness there is framed as like, part of the national the asset, right? But now in the contemporary moment, at least in my research on like drone delivery, the way they frame what is an asset? Like what makes a good test bed is completely different.
Yep.
It's framed in terms of, as we mentioned, Logan's multiculturalism is why that site in particular became a success story.
Yep.
So things like, multiculturalism, like, there is such a diversity of audiences here, diversity of users, and these users make ideal early adopters. And that's what makes this a great place to do your product services testing. And indeed, that has become like a local strategy for like a council like Logan, which for a hot minute there was trying to brand itself as the Silicon Valley of the South
Yep.
and had opened all these innovation centers to try and lure like big tech companies to set up shop.
Yep. And how successful has that been?
None, zero. So
Okay. Yeah, right.
zero. So
Okay.
like literally places I went and did interviews with are now closed down.
Yep.
Canberra for a hot minute was also like, we're an ideal test bed too. Like we have autonomous vehicle testing here. We have like the world's largest like virtual power plant here. We got all the, but also that seems to have like slowly disappeared uh,
Mm.
away from the imaginaries of local council.
Yep. Yeah. And I suppose in terms of the differences in some of the historical examples you use in terms of like medical testing on Indigenous populations, um, the nuclear testing, what we have here is a lot more kind of private, like company. It's kind of indicative, I suppose, of the rise of the corporation as such a powerful entity, isn't it? As now they're key players in these kind of powerful arrangements. It is probably more so than like state governments and stuff like that are kind of opening their doors and telling them to kind of come in a way that like wouldn't have been as imaginable maybe in the 20th century.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like it tells you a lot about who has the power to
Yeah.
do, like who has the power to sort of dictate, like,
Mm.
what's important, what is not, how do we treat a population, and so on.
Yeah.
Like who has the resources to do this scale of testing. I mean, part of the reason why I advocate for looking historically is if we look at Maralinga and the nuclear weapons testing, like the hope was that it would like that kind of investment from a British nuclear testing team would impart knowledge
Mm.
for us, that we would be able to benefit in some way scientifically by hosting those tests. But that was just not the case. And the Royal Commission that followed, um, looking at nuclear weapons testing, was that actually like everything was shrouded in secrecy because it was all about Cold War military material.
Yeah.
And so when they left, they took that knowledge with them. And
Yeah.
we see the same happening here. And like we see wings slowly, like they're expanding, but they're also like kind of pulling out of Australia in very interesting ways.
Right.
It's not like we've got our own drone companies to like compensate for it now. Like once they're gone, they're
Yeah.
gone. Because we can't. How can anyone compete with Google?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I see almost similar correlation going on here with like the discourse around like building data centers now are going to be great for places and there'll be jobs and all that kind of stuff. But we know as soon as they're built, there's very few jobs. There's just a bit of maintenance and they're just terrible for all kind of access of what's going on in the local area. And yeah, these things are always kind of sold as like panaceas for various social problems at the moment, but like more often than not kind of create more or different problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the state premier at the time when the deal was being announced between Wing and Logan was just like jobs, jobs, jobs. This is going to be amazing for locals.
Mm.
But these are autonomous drones. They don't have
They don't pilot.
pilots.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like at them, they don't have. They have like there's one pilot per 15 drones. Those pilots aren't piloting anything. They're just there to like monitor the weather.
yeah.
And when it rains, they ground all the drones. That's their job.
Right,
And they don't even live in Logan. Like half of them like live in Canberra, right?
right.
And those will be the first jobs they get offshored.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. To sum up, and maybe you're reflecting across the two conversations we've had, can you tell us kind of what's important here in terms of the kind of recalibration of race through these kind of data and historical things, and what's going to happen next?
What is going to happen next? That's a really big question. I'll start with the first one.
Yep.
Um, I'll start with the first one, which is I mean, for me, I'm like a media studies person at heart. So thinking about mediation, thinking about sort of the technicity of a thing, like how, when we think about like, how do we undertake communication and how does that change with the apparatuses with which we like construct that communication? communication, the medium is the message, this kind of thing. I think that's a really important lesson to learn when it comes to like what's happening now and how do we understand the changes that are taking place now. Because
Mm,
even though we feel it in our body, like we see the racist effects, we feel racialization like happening to us, like paying attention to what the what processes, how that takes place, what data is being pulled in, like the claims that are being made, paying attention to those things is still quite important,
yeah.
to be able for us to like develop a nuanced argument about like what's going on now and therefore like what we should do next.
Hmm. Yep.
And where are things going is a much
Yeah.
harder thing to answer because um, it's really unclear. But I do think being able to do some of this historical work and this close, slow, critical work
Mm,
is where we should always go next
yeah.
for us as like sociology students and teachers and so on, is to pay attention to what's happening in the social, and not to blindly believe the things that are being told to us.
Yep. Excellent. That's a great way to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you.